Could a new viral threat be lurking in the shadows of the jungle? Brace yourselves, humanity, an insidious new viral menace is creeping ever closer to our doorsteps, and it could be deadlier than anything we've ever encountered. Sloth Fever Virus, SFV, a mysterious and terrifying pathogen emerging from the deepest, most remote rainforests of South America, has virologists and infectious disease experts on edge. As cases are beginning to trickle in from those infected by this slow-moving, yet ruthless predator, global health organizations are scrambling to understand its full impact before it spins out of control. Could Sloth Fever Virus be the next pandemic, one even worse than COVID-19 or the Spanish flu? The answer may be more horrifying than we ever imagined. It all began in the wild, untamed heart of the Amazon. Sloths, those gentle, slow-moving creatures we often associate with lethargy and sleepiness, may have been harboring this deadly virus for millennia, completely undetected. But nature, as always, has a dark side, and the sloth's sluggish pace may have concealed a sinister secret. Sloth fever virus, now identified as an aggressive zoonotic disease, is believed to have jumped from these peaceful animals to humans, thanks to the rapidly accelerating destruction of their habitats. Deforestation, illegal logging, and the relentless encroachment of humanity into pristine jungle territories have pushed sloths, and the virus they carry, closer to human populations. In the last 5 years, bushmeat hunters, scientists, and even ecotourists have found themselves in closer contact with sloths than ever before. And just like the infamous Ebola virus, it took only one infected individual to set off a chain reaction of nightmarish proportions. The initial cases of sloth fever virus were detected in a small, isolated community deep within the Amazon basin. Local indigenous tribes began experiencing strange, debilitating symptoms that baffled their traditional healers. Some of the afflicted had recently interacted with sloths, either through bushmeat hunting or handling, and soon began to exhibit an illness so bizarre and terrifying that it sent shockwaves through the local medical community. Once the virus was identified, a global network of epidemiologists, virologists, and doctors quickly sprang into action. But what they discovered was more chilling than they could have ever imagined. Sloth fever virus starts subtly, its symptoms sneaking up on its victims like a predator stalking its prey. At first, it seems harmless, just a slight fever, mild fatigue, and a general feeling of sluggishness. But don't be fooled by these benign early signs. Within days, the true horror begins to unfold. The first major symptom that differentiates sloth fever virus from common illnesses is the overwhelming and inescapable lethargy that grips its victims. People infected with SFV report a deep, almost paralyzing exhaustion, as if their muscles have turned to lead. No amount of sleep seems to alleviate the fatigue. Victims describe an eerie sense of being weighed down, moving in slow motion through the world, much like the sloth itself. This sloth-like paralysis begins to worsen by the day. As the virus progresses, muscle spasms and joint stiffening become common, resulting in excruciating pain. In severe cases, entire limbs have been known to lock in place, rendering individuals unable to move their arms or legs for hours at a time. The spasms come in waves, causing sharp, debilitating pain that has been compared to the sensation of electric shocks coursing through the body. If you manage to survive the initial onslaught of symptoms, sloth fever virus leaves a lasting, horrific legacy. Those who recover from the virus often report lingering effects that could persist for years, if not for the rest of their lives. Recovery is slow, and the aftereffects are often devastating. Survivors frequently suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, a condition characterized by persistent exhaustion, muscle pain, and cognitive dysfunction. This debilitating fatigue makes it nearly impossible for victims to return to their normal lives. Many are left bedridden for months, struggling to perform even the simplest tasks. The cognitive decline seen in the later stages of the virus doesn't fully reverse in all patients. Survivors may experience permanent brain fog, short-term memory loss, and difficulty concentrating. In some cases, survivors develop more severe neurological conditions, including tremors, seizures, and even early-onset dementia. The muscle spasms and joint stiffening caused by the virus can lead to long-term musculoskeletal disorders. Some survivors develop arthritis-like symptoms, with joints becoming permanently swollen and painful. Muscle weakness persists, and many survivors struggle to regain their former mobility, often requiring extensive physical therapy. The damage inflicted on the heart and circulatory system is another devastating consequence. Many survivors experience long-term cardiovascular issues, including heart arrhythmias, chronic heart failure, and blood pressure irregularities. These complications increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes later in life. Even after recovery, the lungs may never fully heal. Survivors often deal with chronic respiratory problems, such as shortness of breath, a reduced capacity for physical exertion, and a heightened susceptibility to respiratory infections. If the symptoms of sloth fever virus weren't terrifying enough, experts are now warning that this new virus could unleash a pandemic far worse than anything the world has seen before. Despite the slow-moving, lethargic nature of the virus, its stealthy transmission could make it even more dangerous. The virus is highly contagious, and unlike diseases that incapacitate their hosts rapidly, SFV allows its victims to remain mobile and communicative for days, long enough to unknowingly spread the virus to dozens, if not hundreds, of people. SFV is believed to be spread primarily through close contact with bodily fluids, but there is evidence that it can also be airborne in certain conditions, such as in crowded, humid environments. One of the most concerning aspects of sloth fever virus is that many carriers are asymptomatic during the early stages of infection. These silent spreaders continue to go about their daily lives, unknowingly transmitting the virus to everyone around them. The incubation period is long, up to 2 weeks, meaning that infected individuals could potentially travel across continents before the virus takes hold, wreaking havoc in their wake. As of now, there is no known cure or vaccine for sloth fever virus. Researchers are working frantically to develop treatments, but progress has been slow, much like the virus itself. With the world still reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the prospect of another, even deadlier virus on the horizon is enough to send shockwaves through the global community. Hospitals, already strained from previous pandemics, are ill-prepared for the influx of patients that would come with a full-blown sloth fever outbreak. Intensive care units, ICUs, could quickly become overwhelmed, leading to a catastrophic collapse of healthcare systems worldwide. The virus's long incubation period, coupled with its ability to mimic common flu-like symptoms in the early stages, makes it incredibly difficult to detect and contain before it spreads like wildfire. At this stage, the future of humanity in the face of sloth fever virus remains uncertain. If SFV gains a foothold in densely populated urban centers, the results could be devastating. Entire cities could be paralyzed as the virus sweeps through the population, leaving millions incapacitated by its relentless grip. Global economies would grind to a halt as entire workforces are struck down by the virus, and governments would struggle to maintain order in the face of mass hysteria. While the world watches and waits for a breakthrough in treatment or prevention, there is a growing sense of dread that sloth fever virus could become the defining crisis of our generation. Is this slow-moving monster the next Black Death? Could it topple civilization as we know it? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the world cannot afford to underestimate the lethal potential of sloth fever virus. As we stand on the precipice of what could be the next global pandemic, we must prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Sloth fever virus may be slow, but its impact could be devastatingly swift. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and, above all, stay safe. The slow march of sloth fever virus has begun, and no one knows where it will stop.